Welcome back to our course on Excel 2013. In this section we're going to look at checking spelling. Now, although a lot of your Excel spreadsheets will be mainly populated with numbers, on many occasions you'll also have a lot of words as well, and it's therefore very important to be able to check the spelling in the work that you've done. Now, in order to demonstrate the checking of spelling in Excel 2013, I've used one of the standard templates, a personal cash flow template, and I've put into that a few spelling mistakes, different types of spelling mistakes, or I should say spelling mistakes that demonstrate different points about the Excel 2013 spell checker. Now, first of all, there are a couple of areas where we first of all need to check and possibly change the Excel options related to spell checking. So into Backstage View and click on Options. Now, for this spell checking aspects of Excel 2013, you need to go to the Proofing tab. And in the Proofing tab, we've got two sections really. One section is autocorrect options, which is an area I'm going to come back to a little bit later on in this section. And then we have the main section of options when correcting spelling in Microsoft Office programs. Now, you've got a number of options here. Some of them you really need to be careful about. Some of them you may need to experiment with first. But the first one, for example, is ignore words in uppercase. So if I've got a word somewhere which is in uppercase, do not check the spelling. This is very often the case if you're dealing, say, with something like part numbers or technical information where you have sequences of uppercase characters, but they're not meant to represent words, normal words in the language that you use. Similarly with the second option, ignore words that contain numbers. It's very often the case, again, with something like part numbers or references, bank account numbers, that sort of thing, that you'll have things that could be taken for words, but anything that's got numeric digits in it is not a word. So there's a set of these here that are worth checking. Another one in the middle there, flag repeated words. If you see the same word twice in a row, just flag the fact that that's happened. Now, with the setting at the bottom, we have dictionary language. That's a very important one to get right. Mine is currently set to English United Kingdom, but really for the purposes of this section, I'm going to change it to the other one I use most of the time, which is English United States. There's then some information related to French modes and Spanish modes, and you can in fact set up custom dictionaries. If you say have Excel workbooks that relate to very specific kinds of sets of words, so you have perhaps an unusual language in them, you maybe have some lists of proper names that you use in some situations, then you may want to set up a custom dictionary to use for spell checking. I'm going to leave that at the moment, and I'm just going to concentrate on the options that I've set here. And as I said just now, I'll come back to autocorrect a little bit later on, so click OK. Now, this particular workbook has 4 worksheets. You can see the names of the worksheets at the bottom: Guide, Annual Cash Flow, Monthly Cash Flow. I've currently got the Guide worksheet selected. If you have a single cell selected on a worksheet and you start spell checking, then Excel 2013 will check the spelling on the whole of that worksheet. If on the other hand you have, say, several cells selected, it will only check the spelling in the cells you have selected. Now, I'm not going to go into this now, but if you're part way through entering data in the formula bar, you can actually just spell check all or part of what's in the formula bar. But for the moment, I'm going to restrict to checking spelling on the sheet. And by having just one cell selected, when I check spelling, it will check the whole of this worksheet. So the tab we need on the ribbon is Review, and on the Review tab right over on the left we've got Proofing, and the first button over there is Spelling. Now note, with spelling there's a keyboard shortcut of F7, and you'll probably find that's one of the ones you tend to remember to check spelling, so that's F7. Click on Spelling. Now it says spell check complete, you're good to go. That means that on this sheet it found no errors at all, which is good news, and that's what you hope to find when you spell check a worksheet. So that's great. Click on OK for that one. Now let's move on to the second worksheet. Now let's try spell checking this sheet. This time I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut of F7. And this time it seems to have found a mistake. It says not in dictionary, and it's got RISERVES, reserves. Now, if I move the little dialogue around, I should be able to find out where it says that. And you can see there's an obvious spelling mistake there. That should say cash reserves with an E. Now, when it finds what it thinks is a mistake, it will normally make suggestions about what the correct word might be. And if you see that one of those suggestions is the word you want, and in this case I realize the word I want is reserves, then I can substitute just by saying use this word, and to do that I say change. Now, if in fact it found what it suspected was a spelling mistake, and of the suggestions that it made there wasn't one that was the correct suggestion, I could actually type over what's in the word at the top there, reserves. I could actually type in there what the words should be. Obviously I'm going to put the right word in here, and then typing in the correct word and then just say change. Watch what happens on the sheet, and you can see that the correction has been made on the sheet. When you make a change, what will normally happen is it will go to the next suspected spelling mistake on the same sheet. So what it's done here is it's gone straight down to the next entry, which says 401k stroke etc, etc. And what it says here, etc, is not in my dictionary. I think what you meant is etc dot. Now, this is a somewhat stylistic question here, because some people always put the dot at the end of etc and some people don't. Let's suppose that you decide, well, I'm not bothered about putting a dot there, everybody knows what I mean by etc. You can ignore that, and you can just say, look at the button at the top right, ignore once. So you're saying, yep, I see what you mean, but I don't care, I'm going to leave it at etc. You might also say to yourself, well, yeah, I'm happy with etc, but I've used that all over the place on this worksheet, so this is going to happen time and time again. So you can say, second button down on the right, ignore all. And that will mean that you're saying wherever you see it say etc, just ignore it. I know you want me to say etc dot, but I'm happy with etc, so I will say ignore all. Now it comes down to the next one. The next spelling mistake, charity. Now that should be, well, that should be charity. Look at the suggestions. Charity is the first one. It's not that. Charity, that's the one I want. I'm picking one from the list and I say change. And now it says, do you want to continue checking at the beginning of the sheet? Although I didn't point it out there, when we started checking this particular sheet, we had a cell in the middle selected. And Excel 2013 always starts spell checking at the cell you've got selected. So when it gets to the end of the sheet, it says, do you want to go back and start at the beginning again? I'll say yes. And now it says spell check complete. That's good. You're good to go. Okay, so now you should have the general idea of that. I just want to demonstrate one other sheet. Go to daily cash flow. I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to go review, spelling. On this occasion it finds a word. The word is Swift Cover, all in one word. Now in fact Swift Cover is a valid word because it's a proper name. It's the name of an insurance company. And Swift Cover Insurance, which is the entry that it's flagged this problem in, is absolutely fine because Swift Cover is a real word. If I want to keep that so that it doesn't flag that as a spelling mistake in future, I can click on Add to Dictionary. And if I add that word to my dictionary, whatever else I'm doing in the future when I'm using this dictionary, even if I'm checking a completely different workbook, then because that word is in my dictionary, if I'm using that dictionary, then that will be treated as a valid word. So if I want to add that to dictionary, I say Add to Dictionary. That one's now accepted. It's now found home improvements. Oh, that's a regular kind of spelling mistake. I'll just say change for that one. There's etc again. I'll ignore all on etc. And there we are. Do you want to continue checking at the beginning of the sheet? Yes. Spell check complete. You're good to go. So there we are. My spell checking is all done. So there's just one other thing to mention here. I need to go back to the options and talk to you about autocorrect options, which I mentioned right near the beginning of this section. You can tell Excel 2013 to correct common typing mistakes as you enter data. And this is what autocorrect means. Click on autocorrect options from the proofing tab in Excel options. That brings up this little dialog, and it will be set according to your locale, and then you have a number of options that you can choose between. Now, to some extent these depend on your own style, your own requirements, but for instance, if you look at this first tab, autocorrect, correct two initial capitals. Do you commonly accidentally type two initial capitals? If you do, you can tell Excel 2013 to correct that for you, to replace each of the two capitals with a single capital. If you commonly deal with data where two initial capitals are valid, you wouldn't want this option set. But the options here are the typical typing mistakes that people make. So we have things like capitalize the first letter of sentences. You can say to Excel, I'm just going to type, you put capitals on the first letter of each sentence. Do you want to capitalize the names of days? So whenever I type the word Monday, do I want a capital M? Now, there are also various replacement categories. So take that one for instance. If I type open brackets C close brackets, that becomes a copyright symbol. There's a whole list of those, and you can obviously enter your own by putting replace with entries in there. And then auto format as you type, actions, math autocorrect, etc. There's a whole set of those. Obviously the settings you want will depend on you. You have the ability here to define exceptions. So if you want to use autocorrect, and I tend to use autocorrect, you need to tune that and select the options there that suit both the way you do things and the particular situation you're in regarding what sort of data you type into your spreadsheets anyway. So that's spell checking. I'll see you in the next section.